Hello, welcome to Prep Scale Learning. I'm Bindu Amat and I'm delighted to welcome you to this session on English literature for higher secondary teachers. Today, we will look at the genre of prose. Well, the study of English prose begins with the work of the preeminent man of letters of the age of English Renaissance, Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was a towering personality of his age. He excelled himself in various fields. He was a jurist, a statesman, a historian, an intellectual reformer, a philosopher, and a champion of modern science, besides being an eminent man of letters. It was for this all-round personality of his that he was often considered as the English version of Leonardo da Vinci, the total Renaissance man. And since he was so eminently educated a man of his age, as a person who had attended university, he was also considered by many a historian as the real author of the works of William Shakespeare. As a man of science, he was considered as a champion of modern science, as the founder of the empirical method. The method that insists on experimentation and observation before arriving at a conclusion. So he was considered as a pioneer who had contributed much to the development of the scientific method. Well, we will focus on Bacon, the writer. Bacon, known as the father of the English essay, inspired as he was by the French essays written by his contemporary Montaigne, he introduced to the English language the essays, which became quite a sensation. Well, before we look at the essays, let's take a look at some of the other works of Francis Bacon. As many an educated man of his time, he wrote not just in English but in Latin as well. Novum Organum is one of his major works, where he elucidated in Latin the method of scientific inquiry. The Advancement of Learning is another major work in which he advocated for a reform of education and the pursuit of knowledge. New Atlantis is another work, a utopian work in which he describes a society where everyone is focused on learning. It is a land that promotes scientific inquiry and new discoveries. That was New Atlantis. But we'll focus on the essays, which came out as a collection that explored the various topics dealing with human life and knowledge. Bacon's essays are known as Counsels, Civil and Moral. The title of the collection is The Essays, or Counsels, Civil and Moral. Counsels or pieces of advice. When you read the essays, that is the impression that you get, that here is somebody who seeks to give pieces of advice on civil and moral matters. Bacon's essays were, short compositions composed of very short lines which contain plain statements of facts. That is why they are known as aphoristic essays. The sentences read like aphorisms. An aphorism is a plain statement of a fact or a truth. It's not a mere opinion. It is not something that expresses any kind of uncertainty. It's a plain and bare statement of fact. That is the kind of sentences that you have in the essays. Bacon's essays are the best examples of aphoristic essays. Being a scientist, he naturally adopted a highly objective tone. Never does he go to the extent of becoming personal in his essays. The sentences are plain statements. They do not express his emotions. They do not express his personal feelings on any topic. They are very impersonal and objective throughout. The sentences, as I told you, are short and pithy. For this reason, they are also known as epigrammatic. An epigram is a terse statement which contains a lot of meaning packed into it. And these are sentences that compose Bacon's essays are epigrammatic. They are short, pithy, terse statements which have in them a lot of wisdom, knowledge, insight, and truth. As a man of the rich Elizabethan age, who had lived through the heights that England had reached during the Elizabethan age, when life and culture in England became exposed to a lot of influences from other regions of the world, he brings in a lot of imagery into his essays. So you can find the essays to be highly illustrative. The large number of similes and metaphors that he uses to emphasize the points that he makes, they give his essays a highly illustrative style. Latinism is another feature of Bacon's essays. As a person who was educated, which meant being educated in Latin during those times, you find a lot of Latin expressions strewn all over the essays. He wrote in the vernacular English, but the Latin expressions are used by the writer to pack a punch, to make a very strong statement, to say a thing in the best possible manner. He often uses these Latin expressions. Well, these are the features of Bacon's style, and I guess a look at the essay of studies, which is part of our syllabus, would be the best way to understand Bacon, the writer, the style of Bacon. So that's what we will take a look at now. Of Studies is one of the well-known essays of Bacon, much anthologized, oft quoted. It's part of the collection of essays which first came out in 1597 and the later editions of which came out in 1612 and 1625. As the title indicates, it's a piece that focuses on studies, on learning, on the pursuit of knowledge. And the theme naturally is the value and the benefit of learning, of studies. The essay is divided into three parts, where he begins with the benefits of studies, goes on to talk about the practical uses that studies can be put to, and finally also ends with the limitations of studies. So the first part of the essay focuses on the benefits of studies. I think the very first sentence tells us a great deal about Bacon's essays in general. The essays are all written in a tightly composed manner. You do not have any paragraph divisions. The essays just begin abruptly and end abruptly. It's not, the conventional essay. We think of an essay as a piece of personal writing in which you have a proper introduction, a well-developed body, and then a conclusion. Well, Bacon's essays were nothing like that. The essays begin abruptly, end abruptly, and never, as I told you, are they very personal. So this is the first sentence of this essay. Studies serve for delight, for ornament, and for ability. It's as plain as it can get. It's a statement that he makes without any introduction, without any lengthy introduction. He just jumps right into the topic and says, studies are for delight, for ornament, and for ability. Under normal circumstances, each one of those words, delight, ornament, ability, would have been the matter for a whole paragraph in the work of any other writer. But Bacon packs all these tightly into just one sentence, leaving a lot of room for the reader to ponder over the wisdom that is encapsulated in the sentence. Studies serve for delight. There's much delight that you can get from the pursuit of learning. It's something that gives you a lot of pleasure. It gives you a lot of delight. But that's not all. He says, studies also serve for ornament. A person who is highly educated is a much respected person. That person wears studies like an ornament. It is something that embellishes, decorates his or her personality. So studies serve for ornament. They give you grandeur. And finally, studies also give you a lot of ability. They give you expertise. They make you an authority on the field of study that you are engaged in. So it's a sentence that can be considered as typically Baconian. A short, pithy sentence which is stated in a very objective manner, which reads almost like an aphorism. The second part of the essay is where he talks about the practical uses that studies serve. Studies help us in decision making and problem solving. Studies also enhance the abilities that are required for different professions. And from that, he moves on to the third section where he talks also about the limitations of studies. The essays are never prescriptive. The essays always state facts in a most in the plainest possible manner, but they never prescribe anything. He never says, so this is better than the other. He gives you two sides of the same coin in a very scientific manner, the pros and the cons. So after stating all the pros of studies, he also takes care to present the cons, things that one needs to keep in mind, because he says, the danger of excess is something that you need to be wary of. Overindulgence in studies, for example, can lead to tedium. It can lead to laziness, to sloth. Sloth is the word that he uses. And it's not enough to merely be engaged in scholarly pursuits. Studies always need to be tempered with experience. So the essay in a way invites our attention to the importance of balancing study with experience, of tempering studies with experience. So this being the outline of the essay, let's now take a look at the essay itself. We'll read the first part of the essay. Studies serve for delight, for ornament, and for ability. Their chief use for delight is in privateness and retiring. It's when you are on your own that you enjoy that aspect of studies. Studies give you a lot of delight, pleasure, something that you enjoy on your own. For ornament is for discourse and is in discourse. It's when you are in conversation with others, in discourse, that you realize the ornamental value of studies. You realize that studies give you a great deal of grandeur. Studies lend grandeur to your personality. It becomes evident when you are in discourse, in conversation with others. And the third important benefit of studies, ability, is in the judgment and disposition of business. It's when it comes to dealing with a particular issue, it's when it comes to maybe solving a particular problem that the ability of a learned person comes to the fore. That person would be able to take the right judgment, dispose of the business, deal with the matter in the best possible manner, empowered as the person is with studies. For expert men can execute and perhaps judge of particulars one by one, but the general counsels and the plots and marshalling of affairs come best from those that are learned. That holistic vision belongs only to the most learned person. There are skilled people who can deal with issues in their individual capacity. They can solve a minor issue, for example, but to take the whole issue into consideration, to solve not just the problem, but to solve the problem in its entirety, in the whole context, that requires the advice or the expertise of a learned person. However, soon after this, he says, let us not think that, studies are the end of everything. To spend too much time in studies is sloth. Studies lend you a lot of benefits, but then if you overindulge in it, it will definitely make you slothful. In other words, lazy. To use them too much for ornament is affectation, and simply to wear your studies, your knowledge, your wisdom, the wisdom that you've gained from your studies for ornamental value, that is a sign of vanity, of affectation. It's only a very vain person who will make use of his or her studies only for their ornamental value. And to make judgment wholly by their rules is the humor of a scholar. It would also be rather erroneous, he says, to make judgment solely on the basis of studies. This is where he highlights the importance of having practical knowledge along with theoretical lessons. The theoretical lessons need to be properly tempered with practical experience. They perfect nature and are perfected by experience, for natural abilities are like natural plants that need pruning by study. So natural abilities, the abilities that you are born with, they can take you far in life, but then there is always a little more that you can do if you put studies to your natural abilities, if you add studies to your natural abilities. And studies themselves do give for directions too much at large, except they be bounded by experience. But studies by themselves again can become rather vague. You need to complement your studies with practical experience. Then he moves on to another important aspect where he tells us about the attitude that different people have towards studies. Crafty men condemn studies, simple men admire them, and wise men use them. For they teach not their own use, but that is wisdom without them and above them.